Right back. Welcome back to another video from the Clark and Addison Gaming Company. My name is Brian Hafferkamp. I'm the designer and creator at the Clark and Addison Gaming Company. And in this video, we're going to do another what I'm working on. So I thought it'd be nice to just kind of get into this a little bit. I think the last one I did was for March, and so it's now halfway through April, and we can see just some of the things that I've been dinking around with. I'm going to spend most of my time on precision baseball, but there's a couple other projects I've been doing. This is using um, a what a simulation chart. So if you go to clarkandaddisongaming.com and then you can click on baseball or shop all games. It's actually it's not on page one. So let's go to the free section. And these are all the free resources that you can download. You can see there's some demos and quick start guides and things, but this is what I've been using, the baseball simulation chart. Basically, this has, I use the away team here and the home team's winning percentage here. Excuse me. And then I just match up those things. So if you have a team that's a 400 winning percentage playing against a team that's 300, you just cross-reference those and you roll. And if I was going to do this, I would say 1 to 40 means that the home team wins. Otherwise, it's the away team with a 60-40 chance of winning. So the team with the higher winning percentage has the higher chance of winning. And you just roll two d10s or you roll a d100 or whatever you have. Basically, it's a 1 to 100 roll. And then whoever wins, right? And so you're sort of matching up. If it was a team that was playing 500 ball against a 300, there'd only be a 32% chance for um, that 300 winning percentage team to win. So that's how it works. It's a free download. You can just download it there, and just would give you a nice, easy way to figure out a winner. Basically, what I'm doing is I'm rolling, and then I'm figuring out the winner. This is the actual schedule for the MLB for this year. So you can see I've made it all the way through uh, April 7th. So I'm about almost 2 weeks behind now. Um, but just my plan was to just do a day at a time. But life gets in the way, and so I'm just going through and putting all of the standings here, and then I'm keeping them sorted over here. So this is just my workspace. So when a team wins, I just add a win, or when they lose, I add a loss. But over here, these are always continually updated. So I have a sort formula that's set up where um, I sort this AL East. I think that's how I have it. Yeah, I have it by each division sorted. So it just goes over to the sheet here, grabs those, sorts it by um, one, two, three, four, sorts it by the fourth column. That's what that means. And then this has to do with ascending or descending. So basically, we want it to be largest on top, and you we want it to be descending, right? So false means descending. So that's what happens when you use the sort function here. As you can see, it's the range of columns that you want, um, and then how you want to sort that column, which column to sort by, and then is it ascending or descending. So that's sort of what the formula means. And you can auto sort those things so that even if the values change over here, they say stay sorted over here. So you can see Tampa Bay at this point and New York are leading in the AL East. Minnesota and Chicago, which that's way off, is leading in the AL Central. LA and Houston, also way off, are leading the AL West. San Francisco and LA, that's not so far off. Milwaukee and Pittsburgh, that's actually not that far off with St. Louis as well. Chicago should have a few more wins based on real life, and then Atlanta is leading in the AL, or the NL East, which surprisingly for Washington, they've played pretty well here in the beginning, and Miami and New York, a few more wins, but still pulling up the rear. And what I've been doing is basically going over, basically going over to Baseball Reference and looking up. Um, was it baseball? No, it was at Fangraphs. I went to Fangraphs and I found the projections. Let's see. I don't know exactly how I got there or what I looked for. It was under their projections, but I just don't remember exactly where. These are preseason. Um, what's it called? Projected standings. Okay, that's what I was looking for. So it's kind of in a weird spot. It's under depth charts. It's under depth charts. And you can see here this is their projected full season 2024. And I'm just using their winning percentage um, that's projected out. You can do what their actual year to date standings were. You can project out the rest of the season from today forward, or they are always updating their projected full season. This is actually a little bit different because I've been using one that was like 601 for the Braves, which doesn't make any difference in reality. Um, they're both going to use the 600 winning percentage on that chart. So it's not wholly out of line, and this was 375, now it's 374. So they're changing just a little bit based on their runs scored and runs against. So this is basically their Pythagorean uh, winning percentage or wins losses. And so you can see those updated in real time. You can see what they're doing in real life. So the Braves are playing at a 667 clip. They're expecting them to come back a little bit. They're at 10-5. Same for the Dodgers to come back just a little bit, and for the Yankees to come way back in the AL East. So, and then this is projecting out what the rest of the season is going to look like. So, um, so that's what I've been using, and then using those winning percentages, I've been looking here, and then I will go through. I'm still trying to decide if I want to just continue going through the schedule with the winning percentages that I have that were sort of the first week of the season and playing out the entire season that way. Or like once I'm right now at about 10 games, so from this point on, should I just go ahead and take the winning percentages that have already been established for each of these teams and say, I got you off to a running start with what you were supposed to do, and then now we're going to use what you've been doing in order to play out the rest of the season. That was my original plan. I don't know if that's what I'm still going to do or not. Um, so that's one thing I've been working on. The second thing I've been working on is precision baseball. And if you've been watching any of the other videos, you'll recognize these batting cards here, right? So this is what they look like in living color. You're kind of seeing them small on the screen in a video, but this is what they look like now. I think I'm going to take away this color here and just have no blocks of color there. When I print the cards out, this is so small it's kind of hard to see. So I think if I take away that color, it'll make it a little bit easier to read. One exciting, well, I'll go through a couple things. One, I recently created the rating system here. So the batters have ratings, and the pitchers also have a rating here. As you can see the rating here for the pitchers. So that rating is a compilation of a lot of different things that you can see here. This is my spreadsheet I use. So I have all of their baseline stats here and a few extras, ground ball percentage, barrel percentage, hard hits. And this is base running, and this is all their defensive uh, statistics here. So I'm just pulling those in from this fielding data that I used. And then what I do is I calculate singles per plate appearance, singles, doubles, triples, home runs, walks, strikeouts, hit by pitch. So that's everything that you see here. So all of these values here are based on a per plate appearance. That's how they start out. And then I have a bunch of these are all my uh, gameplay events, and then these are the non-out events. So basically, um, what is the average of all of the, or what's the sum of all of these non-out events? So each of these outcomes that are not outs, what is that sum? And then I subtract that from one, and then I get all of the out events per plate appearance. So these are all the non-out events per plate appearance. These are the outs per plate appearance. And then I take their ground ball, fly ball, and line drive percentages, and then I sort of divvy up this 4.475. And so his single percentage is uh, per per plate appearance. He has a 12% chance. So I multiply that chance times AX, which is this one. So this is the singles. What is it? This is my ground ball percentage times um, the outs. So I take the ground ball percentage for the player, I multiply it with these outs, and then I do that for each of the ground balls, fly balls, and line drives. So I kind of divvy up these outs into three parts, but I don't do equally. You can see he's got a 38% ground ball percentage, 45% fly ball percentage, and a 17% line drive percentage. So I take that for each individual batter. Oh, that's the wrong one. And then I do that for ground balls, fly balls, and line drives. So this is how many ground balls out of these outs are you going to have? And then from that, I build out the um, the rolling values, the roll result part of the card, this part here. So I build this part out based off of all that data. So on them, based off of his ground balls here, you can see it's basically a 1 to 82, 1 to 182. And so we have a 1 to 181. So I basically just concatenate a 1 there. And then I convert this into a number that we can use. So it's basically this number here times 1,000. So 1, 2, 3. It moves it all the way over 3 spaces, the decimal, and becomes a whole number of 181. So I do that, and then for the next one, I look at this 181, which is what this is doing. I add 1, so that makes it a 182. I put a dash, and then I add to this 180, to the 181, I add whatever the value is in between. So here it's 213. So I add the 213, and then that basically 181 plus 213 gives you 394, and then you tack that on to the end. So I just keep doing that down the line until you get to the last one, and then it's the value here 947. You add 1, and then you just do dash 1000 because 1000 is my limit. So in that way, I can convert all of these into dice rolls. I learned how to do that in up-tempo basketball, and so that's actually how I do a lot of the team roles on the team cards. If you're familiar with up-tempo, that's how I do all that. I do the same thing. So I'm and I like that system because it allows me to use individual players and their statistics to create the dice rolls. Before I was having to do all that manually, so figured out how to do that with the concatenating and the sort of getting one extra and then creating that range, that dice range. And then the second part is this is the part where if the batter gets a hit off of the pitcher, then this is his percentage of getting a hit. You see that in this gray box here. So this is if the batter gets control of the at bat. This is if the pitcher gets control of the at bat but gives up a hit. So it comes off of this last line here. And then you go back to the batter card and you you say, okay, a 1 to 700 is a single, 701 to 900 is a double, and etc. So that's where that last part comes in right here. So you have to figure out how many singles, what is his singles percentage against all the hits. So how many singles out of all of his hits did he have? So we make those calculations here. Again, that's singles. So J2 divided by I2. You can see I2 is the hits. So it's how many singles per hit, how many doubles per hit, how many triples per hit. And then we figure out those percentages and kind of break that out. That should equal 100 whenever you put all that together, because you're basically just dividing that, all of his hits, into 4 different types, right? So then we can put that on a scale of 1,000. Same thing we do. We turn this 53 into a 530 because you go 1, 2, 3, and you move it over. It's a little bit different over here because it's actually 527. So you're looking at this like a 53 doesn't turn into 526. It's because there are other underlying numbers here. I don't need all those. I mean, I could turn it into that and it would still give me the right ones because it's reading the underlying numbers that are all under there. You can see. So just don't be freaked out. This actually correct when you're looking, when the spreadsheet is looking at the numbers as opposed to when I'm looking at them. I don't really need to know this number. I just want to know this number in the output. So then we do the same thing. We do the concatenating, the 1 and the dash, and then we turn this, we multiply it by 1,000 to turn it into a number that fits on a scale of 1 to 1,000 because we have a 3D10 roll. So that's what we're trying to do. And then you just figure out each one. You get some gaps in here. You can see here, this is what the data looks like before I get to it. So I have to go through, and in fact, I'm going to go back through and I'm just going to take these like this, and it copies the formula down. You can see here it's 1 to 746, 747 to 940 is a double, and then you have 941 to 940, which is not anything. But the reason we get that is because this is a 0. He didn't have any triples. If we go through, we can find his number here. You can see that he didn't have any triples. So when it's trying to calculate how many triples per hit, it's coming out with nothing. Basically, thankfully, it's not giving me an error, but it's also not giving me a number that I can use. So it was suggested to me by Steve Etzel. I like working with Steve. He's very pragmatic and creative in the way that he thinks about things. He also is very knowledgeable about many different types of older baseball games and sims. And so when I'm doing any sort of baseball work, I like to work with Steve. And so he's going to be looking over the spreadsheet and maybe helping me figure out if there's some better ways to do things or some better values. But he was saying, it's probably best just for everybody to have at least some shot at something. So just because the guy didn't have any triples doesn't mean he can't hit a triple. So I think that I've started to do this with the splits, and I'll show you the splits in a minute. But instead of going like that and just getting rid of that, because you see it screws things up here, and I'm going to go back and change things here. Instead of doing that, I should just make this 941. Give that guy a 1 in 1,000 chance, and then it also helps me because I don't have to go up and like change all these formulas like this. So essentially, I would be doing that for all of these like this. And I was going through, and you can see that each time, because these guys don't have any triples, that keeps happening. So if I just do 766 and then I just do 805 like that, then that'll give them their 1 in 1,000 shot. It's a 0.001 chance of hitting a triple, which is most likely not going to happen, but it could happen. And it's such a minuscule chance, but it also helps me to have to not go through and mess up all these formulas. So that's how that works. And before it's just been players just been getting a blank spot, like if they didn't have something, but it's not like they can't hit a home run. It's just that they didn't hit a home run. So we got to fix that up a little bit. And like I said, on the left and right-handed pitching, I've cleaned that up some. And then this is the ratings. So this is sort of at the end. If you remember precision baseball from before, I also had a versus left-handed. So you can see here, if he had a 400 plus WOBA against left-handed pitching, he got a versus left-hand special rating that kind of simulated the important parts of the versus left-handed matchup. And then also had a clutch rating too. So if it was a particular kind of situation, he would get a plus whatever in a clutch situation. I think I'm going to go away from that in the final version of the game, but it's still there. I keep it there just in case I want to add those in. We got our barrel and hard hit percentages. We just convert those again into a 1 to 1,000 out of the percentage. That's just a straight conversion, and that's actually applied to the card right here. So I really don't know what to do with that or how that should be incorporated into the game. I'd like to. If it's not going to happen, then it's not going to happen. So um, I need some smart people to look and help me figure it out. And then in order to get this rating, this has really been the big struggle for me is trying to get a good rating system for the players. Now in play action football, I have an offensive and a defensive rating. That's based purely off of points scored for the season. So basically, you score more points above the average, and you get X rating. So if you're 20% or better than the average of the league, then you get a plus three. I think it's plus three. Yeah. And if you are better than 10%, you get a plus two. If you're anywhere from um, -1 to +1, you get a one. And then if you're less than um, or minus 10 to plus 10%, you get a plus one. And then if you're less than 10%, so if you're more than 10% below the average in terms of yardage gained, you get a minus one. I think that's right. And then if you're minus 20% below, which way I haven't come across any teams like that, you would get a minus two. So that has more to do with like moving you up and down the chart. If you're not familiar with this, you can just pass by it, but you move up and down the chart. And if you move toward lower numbers, you're going to get fewer yards. If you move toward higher numbers, you're going to get higher yards. So that plus and minus directly moves you into a new place. For this game, it's more of um, it's a more subtle because what you're doing is you're just on a particular at bat. It's more of a combat role kind of thing. So you're trying to figure out, does Perdomo have the advantage over, let's say, Zach Gallen? Perdomo is a good player. He's not Zach Gallen good. Zach Gallen is all-star potential Cy Young, right? You're talking about that type of player. And so he should have the advantage in most at-bats. Now, to determine, I started with a true 50-50 system where it was just one D6 roll, and 1 to 3 goes to the batter, 4 to 6 goes to the pitcher, and you just kind of figured it out that way. It was nice and simple and easy. But there was Zach Gallen should have an advantage in the at bat against Perdomo. He should even have the advantage in the at bat against Luis or Lourdes Gurriel. He should have the advantage in any of the against any of these pitcher or the batters. So I wanted to create a system that reflected his advantage in the at bat. In fact, the pitcher should always have a slight advantage because the pitcher just does have the slight advantage in every at bat. He knows what's coming. If he throws the pitch well to the spot that he wants to throw it, he should have the advantage against all but the best hitters in the game. And so I'm trying to reflect that pitcher hitter advantage as opposed to um, not necessarily the cat and mouse game of pitcher and batter, although that's probably built in because the better pitchers are better at doing that. But I wanted to reflect that struggle between the pitcher and the batter a little bit better than just 50-50. 50-50 is okay to get the game kicked off, and it's nice and easy to remember. But this game actually starts with a 50-50 premise. So if each of these players is zero, if let's say Christian Walker is facing off against Zach Gallen, if they had no ratings, that's a 50-50 system. And basically, you do a D20 roll, 1 to 10 for the batter, 11 to 20 for the pitcher. But when we add these ratings in, it begins to change the dynamic there. And so, what we do is we take um, the batter plus the pitcher. So let's say we have Christian Walker, and he's facing Zach Gallen. So we take the 3 and we add -6, which means that you subtract 6 from 3. So if you just do the formula in your head, 3 and then -6 is a -3. So the advantage there is to the pitcher, Zach Gallen, or at least this pitcher. The advantage there is a 3. And the way that we work it is not to add 3. You could add 3 to Zach Gallen if you wanted to. It's just as easy to subtract 3 and just keep carrying that -3 all the way through. So if all things are equal and it's 1 to 10 for the batter, 11 to 20 for the pitcher, now when things are unequal, you take that -3 and you add it to the 10 that the batter has, and that 10 becomes a 7. So you're trying to think so Zach Gallen clearly after the matchup has the advantage. So if he has the advantage, then the batter should have less of a chance of controlling the at bat. And the reason that becomes important is we're reflecting off of these different numbers here. Um, so you can see that his strikeout rate is whatever the 26%. And if we go to this guy's strikeout rate, it is less than 20%. So whatever, 19%. So you go from a 26% chance of striking out to less than 20%. So you can see that there is a distinct advantage if you need to get the ball. If you need to get it up in the air, it's probably going to be about the same. Walk percentage here is, what is it, 6%. But off of the batter card, you're talking 9% walk percentage. So you can see that if the batter gets an advantage, it's a little bit of an advantage because the major things that you need to happen for this batter to get on base are going to be better than off of the pitcher card. So you can see here, good things start happening about 667, and off the pitcher card, good things start happening at 711. So you got about a 5% better chance of something good happening off of the batter card than the pitcher card. Now, as you get to a worse kind of player, maybe that begins to change. Um, so that you can see here, walks start happening at 696, and for the batter card, walks start happening at 667. So it's only about a 3% better opportunity off of this card than off of Merrill Kelly. And same thing here, it gets even worse for this guy. And as you get to a +1 rating, 673 is about the same as here. So good things start happening about 667. Good things start happening off of Tommy Henry at 673. So it's harder to get a good thing to happen off of Zach Gallen's card because you have to roll higher. There's less distance between this number and this number um, than there is between this number and this number. So just trying to think about like how this actually works in reality. How do you reflect this pitcher is better and this hitter is better? Um, Off of Ryan Nelson, Christian Walker would have a +3, and so where he's in the negative against Zach Gallen, he is a +3 batter against Ryan Nelson. And that means that now you take the 10 and you add the 3, and now it's a +3. So it becomes a 1 to 13 goes the advantage to the batter, and 14 to 20 is the advantage to the pitcher. So you can see how it sort of goes up and down depending on which pitcher you bring in. It adds a degree of strategy for who you bring in. Your negative rated pitchers are going to be your better pitchers. Your positive rated pitchers are not going to be very good, or at least not as good. This guy, Madison Bumgarner has not been, he was not good at whatever he was doing. And I'll show you what ratings we were using for those. You can see walks or good things start happening at 544, which is um, it's getting closer to zero. So about 46% of the time, 45% of the time, a good thing is going to happen against Madison Bumgarner. Something good for the hitter and not for the pitcher. So against Zach Gallen, that number is significantly less. It's at 29%. So you're talking almost twice as many opportunities for good things to happen for the batter against Madison Bumgarner than Zach Gallen. So hopefully that's a good explanation, and you can understand like where I'm coming from with that. And then the other part is, well, how in the world do you get to that? So I started thinking about what kinds of things should what makes a hitter a good hitter against a pitcher. And so I came out with hits, home runs, walks, strikeouts, hit by pitch. So these are all sort of your positive kinds of things that would make a batter good against a pitcher. Now, Ks are a negative thing, but if you're good at avoiding strikeouts, that should make you a better hitter, whether it's through contact, which gets figured in kind of through hits and home runs, or it's through avoiding them with walks, which also is good. A hit by pitch, it's not something that a batter determines, but some batters just seem to get hit by pitches more often because of the way that they stand at the plate or the way they take pitches or whatever they do, how they lean in. It's an actual strategy to be able to lean in and get hit by pitch and get on base. So these are all sort of the ways that we're going to judge the batter against the pitcher. If you all can think of something else that's really important outside of these particular statistics that we're also keeping here, um, these are your major stats: hits, home runs, walks, strikeouts, hit by pitch, sacrifice flies, and sacrifice hits. You can't really determine those on an at-bat basis. Grounded into double plays, you can't really, there's so few of them, it doesn't make any sense to make those a counting stat that you can count on, whether that makes you a good hitter in the pitcher-hitter confrontation. So that's what I'm really thinking about. So I take those, and I've settled on a per game. So it's how many hits per game, home runs per game, walks per game, etc. And then I tried plate appearances. I tried all kinds of stuff. And the numbers over here in the final numbers just didn't come out the way that I wanted them to come out. So I decided on doing an average. So these are averages down here. So an average of this data set is 79 games played. So in order to make everybody sort of on a level playing field, I wanted to put hits per, you can see here. So it's per F651, which 651 is our last row. F is our games played. So everybody is sort of being divided by this number over here. That's our denominator. And so however many hits you got are divided by 79 games. So everybody is on a scale of 79 games. I figured that was the easiest way to just go ahead and do this. Maybe if you know anything about statistics, or maybe I'm way off on this. It seems like you just need to pick a number. I did average at bats, which is about 3.5. I also did 4, gives you about the same thing. Um, we think average at bats per game for a starter is going to be 4, right? Somewhere between 4 and 5, probably 4 and 4.5. And that didn't give me over here, that didn't give me a high enough number to be able to get these numbers bumped up. I was getting a lot of like zeros and minus ones and minus twos and twos. And honestly, if I was doing it still a D6 advantage roll, that would work. But I converted it over to a D20, so I needed these numbers to be a little bit more significant than just a 1 or a 2 or a 0. So I needed a little bit more variation. So I went with the higher hits per game, and you can see here that this is Ronald Acuna and Olson and Riley and uh, Ozuna Albies. So these are like the Braves' top hitters. You can see that they're averaging, Acuna almost 3 hits per game. These are starters. They all were averaging a hit per game. And so their numbers are going to be up a little bit. You can see them all. They're either 3s or 4s. These are most of the starters on the team. Um, it's a little bit different up here. Their top 4 are 3s. They don't have a 4. Um, but they also only have a couple of guys at 2 hits per game. So you can see significant difference in the number of hits per game, as well as home runs per game and things like that. So I took these numbers and I did all the calculations, and this is what they come out. This is their per game averages for hit by pitch, strikeouts, walks, home runs, and hits. And then I took this number against the average, so I averaged them all out. These are all the averages for the data set. So across the league, it's a 0.81 hits per game average, 0.12 home runs per game. And then over here, I compared this player's hits to the average. And so, how much better than the average, plus or minus, is this player in regard to hits? How much better is he in regard to home runs, walks, strikeouts, and hit by pitch? So then I calculated all those out. So um, this is his advantage or disadvantage in relation to the average of the data set. So he's 1 hit per game better than the average, a little more than a hit per game better than the average, which makes him a better player, right? So that's kind of how I'm thinking about this is uh, so when you have positive numbers in these 3 and in this one, that makes him better than the average player. If he's striking out less than the average, that should make him a better player, right? So if he's striking out more, which sometimes you get some guys who are striking out more. There should be some guys who are striking out more. It doesn't make sense that everyone would be striking out less. So what we so CA2 minus CA651. So you're saying here the batter against the average. The average strikeouts per game is 0.83. And so a lot of these guys are right on it. And maybe if I expand this out, you can see. So he's just like right at the average. So that makes you a little bit, you're right at the average. So we figured all these out. And these are how good are you above or below the average. the average is going to be 0 over here for the batting. So then we add all these together, and that's this number here. So then we take uh, CC2, CD2, CE2, we add those. We subtract CF2, which is the or the strikeouts above or below average. I wanted those to count as a positive towards your score. So a higher score is better. If you have fewer Ks, and then I just did plus this minus 80, it would subtract that, and it would be like a negative number is better, or a negative number makes this number smaller. But I wanted a negative number in the Ks, the strikeouts, to make this number higher. So uh, you strike out less, that should affect your rating here. And hit by pitches were in there. They weren't making much difference, honestly. Um, you can see if I add this one in here too. Does it make a difference? It doesn't make any difference really. And it was such a small number, it wasn't really making a difference with anybody. It was just adding to the calculations, which I could just say, that's in there. But I don't think it would make much of a difference either way. And so we come out with this rating here, whether you're either average, which is 0, or you begin to creep above average. And it's based off of the player's actual abilities here, as opposed to trying to create a value or using just WOBA or something like that. But actually trying to get a little bit of nuance into what type of player. So maybe they don't get a lot of hits per game, but they avoid strikeouts. That should be reflected in the kind of player that they are within the matchup of just with the pitcher. So again, that's what I'm trying to think about is the matchup with the pitcher. I'm not trying to think about like them getting base hits or anything like that. I'm just trying to figure out the tussle. What is the right way to think about that interaction between the pitcher and the batter? And can we do that in a little bit of a more nuanced way? I have no idea how other game engines do it. For me, this is what I'm going to go with. And just quickly, I did the same thing with the pitchers. So we have our pitcher data here. Again, I do the same thing with the wild pitches, hits, all the possibilities for a pitcher are right here. And I do all those same calculations that I did before. I do the same calculations with the outs. This time I'm using batters faced, which is just like plate appearances for a pitcher. And then I figure out all the outs, what percentage of outs based off of their ground ball, fly ball, and line drive percentages. And then I convert all those over into these ranges, 1 to 1,000. I figure their stamina. Their stamina is just total batters faced divided by games pitched. So I don't do games started. I don't split up starters and relievers. So these numbers are a little bit. They're maybe off by 1 for some of these players because I'm not using games started. So this guy might actually be a 26, not a 25 if you use games started. But it only happens for guys like this where he has a few relief appearances. It would really be the case for someone like, no, there's not a real good example in here, but like this guy. You could do a reliever stamina and then you could do a starter stamina. So basically you would use 20 games started against total batters faced. But the problem is you don't know how many of these batters he faced in his non-starts. So I ran into a lot of issues with stamina early on in creating baseball games, and I've just decided on this like sort of one rubber stamped way to do it. So total batters faced divided by how many games did the guy pitch, regardless whether he started or relieved. This is just a number for me. It's really just kind of a marker and an average. You can move above or below and different things like that. So I do the exact same thing in on-base baseball. Every game I've done. We have all of our. Again, I had some special um, versus left-handed batters. If he had a FIP of it should have been like this, should have been less than one. Um, so if his FIP was lower than one against left-handers, he obviously was really good against left-handed batters. And then I had sort of a clutch rating here that I was using, the PLI, pitcher leverage index, if you want to know. So that's the statistic that I was using, and if that was a 2 plus, then he got like a clutch rating. Not using those in this one, and maybe I'll go back to it, maybe I won't. And then this is all the defensive ratings. Again, pulled off of you can see there's pictures here. So that's pulled off of that, um, out of that fielding data. I pull those over from that fielding data, this sheet. And then for pitchers, just like I have for batters, I used a per game. I This is going to be a similar stat. This is essentially hits per 9 innings, or hits if you pitch 9 innings or a whole game. This is how many hits per nine you would give up. Now I run into some weirdnesses here because obviously these are starters, and then you get down here and you have relievers. Starters have a lot more opportunities to give up hits in 9 innings than relievers do, and this is just sort of it's a weird thing that I'm running into. I'm trying to make sure that I account for that, and you'll see how I make an adjustment later based on that. So I put everybody on the same scale per 9 innings, and then I just I do my own calculation based on how many hits. Um, 823. So P 823 is innings pitched. So average innings pitched. Um, and then I'm not using the player's actual hits per nine. You can find that. I don't know if I've pulled that in here or not. I don't have his hits per nine. But I'm calculating the hits per nine based off of the average number of innings pitched for the data set. So just like I use 79 games as an average for the batters, I use 50, whatever, 52 and a third for this data set is the average number of innings pitched. I just need to put everybody on a baseline. So just try to think about it like that. That's how I'm seeing it. If I'm seeing it wrong and you know more about statistics than me, please tell me. It's better to do it on the average of each player. Like that's going to get you a better result. But for me, I wanted to make sure that everyone was totally leveled out so that I could compare them against each other. And so I leveled them out at the average innings pitched in the data set. So everybody gets this against this average here. And then you multiply that by 9, and that's how you do hits per 9. You do the player's hits given up divided by his innings pitched, and then you multiply that by 9. That's how you get hits per 9, Ks per 9, walks per 9, etc. So it's a pretty simple formula to be able to compare uh, pitchers as if they all pitched 9 innings. So you get a comparison of how good they are. Excuse me. Um, and so once I figure all those out, then I do the same thing over here. I do a plus or minus the average in the league. So we take the averages of all those. So the average of the league on that hits per 9 based off of 52 innings or whatever it is 8.5 hits per 9, 8.8 strikeouts per 9. So if everybody was pitching 52 innings, their strikeout rate would be 8.8 or 3.3 walks. So we've sort of averaged everybody out here. And then we take their plus or minus numbers here. So this is how many hits plus or minus that average that this player has given up. Now you see what I start to run into here, right? So he's given up a lot of hits over the average, but that's because he pitched 210 innings over, that's 150 more than the average, right? So when you have your starters here, they're going to be pitching more innings than the average. And so you're going to get, and the relievers are pitching less. So obviously they're giving up fewer hits um, compared to the average. FIP kind of makes up for it a little bit. So this is the average plus or minus the league FIP, which I figured out here. So this is the league FIP 473. And Zach Gallen is at a what is he at? 326. So he's about 1.5. If you expand this out, he's about 1.5 better than the league average FIP. So he gets, you're only seeing a 1 here, but it's calculating all of those extra decimals out there. So you're seeing how much better against the league average FIP they are. So that counts. This guy here is worse by three runs. He's at 806. So the league average is 4. He's at 8. So he is a +3. So that is really bad. FIP strips out defense and all that kind of stuff and just tries to get to what makes this pitcher better than the next, right? So this is like really zeroed in on the pitcher. So we have our FIP, we have our hits, we have our Ks. If you get more Ks, that should be good for you. If you have fewer walks than the average, that should also count. Just like the strikeouts, fewer strikeouts for a batter should be good for the batter, fewer walks should be good for the pitcher. Okay, fewer home runs should be good for the pitcher. I don't know if I calculated that in, but I think I did. So he's got more walks above the average. He's got more home runs above the average. But again, the average based off of 50 innings pitched, and you just kind of run into some weirdnesses with the starters and relievers. And maybe 100 innings is better because it's kind of a split between them, or 75 or something like that. I don't know what the right number is. I just did the league average, so that gets me in the middle of everybody, whether you're like a pitcher who came in for 12 innings that season or you pitched 200. So that gets me like right in the middle, and to me, that's a good place to be able to judge all of the pitchers in the data set without having to split them out into blocks. So we have all of our stats here, and then we get our hit by pitch. That's an actual number. It's just not very big. It wasn't enough to push it up to 1. Occasionally, you get a guy who had more hit by pitches than the league average. Doesn't happen super often, but a hit by pitch is putting a guy on base and is controllable by the pitcher. So that should count, just like it counts for a batter. So I take I add all of these. You can see here, I add all these numbers up. If BM2, so if you have strikeouts, if you have a higher number of strikeouts, that should be good for you. That should bring your number down. So again, I do a minus. I don't add the 29 because that would make this number higher, which would make you a worse pitcher. What we want to do is drive the pitcher number down, so a negative is better. So we want to make sure that that K is a negative. So that's this one right here, the minus the BM2. And then all of these others should be added up because they mean that it should result in a higher number. If you give up more hits, if you have a higher FIP than the average, if you have more walks, home runs, hit by pitch than the average, that should count against you and push you toward a higher number. So the Ks are the only thing here that should be pushing you to a lower number. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So that's the only one I kind of have to reverse because it's a reverse type of number. Higher is better. All the rest of these, lower is better, right? So then we come out with this aggregate number here, and the way we get to the number is we divide it by 3. If we take that away, you can see that it gives us some huge number. It's supposed to give us a huge number. Oh, it doesn't because we have the minimum, maximum here. Okay, so let's just do, sorry. Okay, let's just take that, and if we just do these numbers all out by themselves, you'll see that it gives us some huge number for Zach Gallen because he's got 24 hits and 29 strikeouts, right? I mean, that becomes sort of a plus five, because or a minus five here. But then you've got all these other numbers, so you get a minus 23, and that on a scale of a 1 to 20 roll, that just doesn't work, right? So we were getting these like huge numbers, plus and minus, right? So there's some guys with like huge plus numbers. Um, we got some guys down here with +2. Here's a +4. So if my guy Zach Gallen up here is a +4, you can imagine that that's like a +18 or something like that, +20. So in order to bring that back into the scale of the 1 to 20 roll between the hitter and pitcher, I divided it by three, and that gave me the right scale of where I need it to be. And maybe there's a better way to do these numbers here, so that these numbers come out better, and I don't have to do that calculation. Like for the batters, I never had to do that sort of calculation. It's just a straight adding everything, and then I cap it at -6 and +6. But um, my thinking on that is on a 1 to 20 roll, if it's a +6, that only gives the other player like a 4%, or what is it? Um, 4 times 20%. That only gives the other player like a 20% chance to control the at bat. They should have some advantage, some way to get an advantage. It shouldn't be like totally wiped out by the pitcher. You shouldn't have no advantage against a batter, or no chance to have an advantage, because pitch counts are going to work in the way that they work. So at some point, you can leverage the at bat. Even a bad major league player can leverage an at bat against Roger Clemens, where he has some advantage. Clemens has to come with a pitch, he has to get it in the zone, or he risks a walk. And so there is some advantage based off of the pitch count. So we'll try to build that in a little bit so that there is some advantage for the batter. So I've capped it at 6, and that should give the either a bad pitcher or a bad batter at least a 20% chance to try to control the at bat. Because even a bad pitcher um, has an opportunity to get a hitter out. So it shouldn't just be like totally wiped out just because Mickey Mantle is facing, a fifth ranked starter. He's still only going to get a hit 40% of the time. Even if he's raking, he's only going to get a hit 40% of the time. So there has to be some inborn advantage, just because of the way the nature of baseball works, even with bad players. So just thinking about that as well. So I cap it at 6. So you can only be a +6 for a pitcher, which is terrible. You can only be a -6, which is like Spencer Strider and Zach Gallen and guys who are probably Ian Snell, people who are competing for the Cy Young. So they're always going to be good in these categories here, and that should be reflected in their pitching. And this is Merrill. Kelly, he's a -4. They had a really good reliever. Is this Ginkle? Yeah, so it's Kevin Ginkle. He had an excellent season, and so he's at a -2. This is the Braves pitching staff, which is loaded. You can see it's Strider, Elder, Morton, Max Fried. AJ Minter had a great year, and so you can see there that's reflected. He's a -2. And then you got some other guys down here who didn't have very good years, and you can see Jared Schuster and Dylan Dodd didn't pitch particularly well here. They didn't get a lot of innings, but they didn't pitch well, and you can see that reflected there. You can see it in their FIP numbers here, 538 and 692. So because they didn't pitch well, and because they have some positive numbers here and positive numbers here, they didn't have as many strikeouts even as the league average. So you can see the reason that they would have a number that was below, because they were below average in strikeouts, they were above average in hits given up and walks and things like that. So that should be reflected in their number being higher, consequently being a worse pitcher. There's a -5 in here somewhere. Who is this guy? That's Kyle Bradish. Bradish had a great year, 12 and 7, 283 in 30 starts, and you can see a -5 reflects that really good year that he had, up in hits, up in strikeouts, but the strikeouts are more than the hits, and The walks are up too, but even when you consider hits and walks, his strikeouts sort of negate that and lead to that negative number there. So if his hits and his strikeout or hits and walks are less than his strikeouts, then that's going to push this number down as well. So that's kind of how those things are working. And then I've gone ahead and I'm starting to do splits. So these are versus left-handed pitching, batters versus left-handed pitching, and I've done the exact same thing. I just copied the spreadsheet over, and now I'm just doing all of those range calculations for left-handed pitching. So same thing here against left-handed pitching, and then I'll need to come over. I'm still deciding whether I want to have a batting rating for left-handed pitching only, or just have a total batting rating, total pitching rating. Um, it's taking a little time to get through all that data, but you can see I'm doing that thing where I just give him like a little small chance. So even though he didn't hit any doubles, triples, or home runs, all of his hits were singles. I'm giving him like a slight chance to be able to get that uh, to get that hit. That's Bryce Terang. So that's against left-handed pitching. And same thing here. He didn't have any because he didn't have any of those at all. The same thing is going to be reflected over here. So all singles, but I'm giving him a slight advantage, a chance to get those in. So I'm going to do that against right-handed, left-handed pitching. I'll come up with I already have kind of a design drawn out on a piece of paper about how I want that to be. So instead of everything being here on the left, I'm going to put all this down the center. There's a game that does that, and I can't remember. I can't remember which one it is, but basically these labels are going to go down the center, and on the right-hand side you'll have these versus right-handed numbers, and then you'll have a set of numbers down the left. It'll say versus left and versus right, but basically you'll see all of these different opportunities here and whether they're right-handed or left-handed, and then you'll have the labels down the middle. We'll put these right and left-handed on each side here, and then I'll just move these defensive ratings over to the left, and the base running ratings will be to the right somehow. It may mean that I need to get rid of this for now because I just don't know what to do with it yet, or it may be that those numbers get put at the bottom. This might give me an opportunity to put some statistics, some basic statistics versus lefty and versus righty down at the bottom, just so you have some kind of baseline stats for each of these players. And then at that point, I'm going to need to make sure that I do left-handed, right-handed switch hitter, just so that you have the ability to see all of those players' handedness whenever they're there. All right, so that's what I'm working on, and then the last one. I'm still trying to work on a digital game for on-base baseball, and I just keep going back, and I keep getting stuck at certain points. And I think for this version, I tried to start with the data. I think what I keep getting stuck on is I'm starting with the user interface first, and I'm not starting with the data and then working out of the data. So I thought I had an epiphany, and I was like, okay, well, let me start with the data so that as soon as, and I don't know if this is going to be, let me do that. Okay. As soon as you get onto uh, as soon as you get here, it pulls in all the data first. And then I put it over here into the roster. So you can see the rosters here for Atlanta. This is a setup for Atlanta and Baltimore or something like that. So basically, you just take all your players, you put them in here. You need to make sure you have 9. And I've done this so many times. When you get to Murphy, that's 9. You can take these guys, you can move them up and down the lineup, and this is basically what their lineup is going to be. You get Albies and Murphy; these two guys kind of switch. You get Rosario, Harris is here, Ozuna's here. So this would be sort of their typical lineup. You get their batting runs, their defense, and their speed. You can save the visitor lineup. It brings up the home lineup. So this is going to be Baltimore. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But you can come and you can choose any of these guys who are at the bottom of their roster as well. You would go through and maybe said Mullins is hitting first and Henderson second and whatever. And then you save that home lineup. You get the visitor pitcher. So we'll put Strider in there, and I don't have that. Of course, I don't have that set up. But basically, you click this, you set the home picture, and then once another screen comes up, I'm gonna actually have the cards so that they can be set, and there'll be more to show for this later. It's still work in progress, so um, still working on that. But I'm just showing. I went back to the drawing board and I thought, where am I getting stuck? And so maybe if I move from the end to the beginning, which is in my own mind, the data is the end and not the beginning. And what if I make the data first? Okay, so let me get in, let me pull the data in from my spreadsheet, and let me make sure that I set everything with the data first. And so I've done that, and now I need to go in and um, now that I have that pool of data, now I can go and pull it in and use it and manipulate it and all that kind of stuff, like I want to do with the user interface. So starting with a new kind of direction on how to do that, trying to think about what's a little bit more conventional way of thinking about baseball games as well, and what's out there, what have people been playing, and kind of pulling in some of those user interface norms and standards. So that's what I'm working on there too. So that's a few of the things that I've been checking out. You know, mostly it's been precision baseball. I'll also be releasing the 2007 NFL season this week. So if you're interested in play action football, that'll be the Patriots 16-0 season. There were a lot of good teams back then. In the AFC East was good. Um, the NFC East was pretty good. They're always kind of good. And there's some pretty excellent teams in there. Obviously, the Patriots, were one play away from being 17-0, and it was a huge play in the Super Bowl. It was one of the great Super Bowls that we've seen. So that might be a really fun one for you, especially if you're a Patriots fan. You'll be able to play that, see if they can do the 16-0 and turn that into a 17-0 undefeated season and be perfect. So that'll be coming out soon, and otherwise, it's a lot of work on precision baseball and trying to get to a place where gamers can uh, demo that and give me some feedback. I'm looking for some play testers, so if you want to be a serious play tester, once I get the lefty righty splits all figured out and then put into there, then I'm gonna create the cards again. So I'll recreate the cards, and then I'll have some cards for you to be able to play the game with. And then I just need to figure out some more things with the fielding system. So I have all of our fielding charts and stuff like that are here. But are there other things that we can do? This was sort of a narrative based, almost an APA based fielding system based off of the different base runners, and then you just roll 1 to 10 to figure out what it is, um, and then try to figure out some other basic fielding stuff here. But um, and then you know this was something I don't know where that was coming from, uh, but this was the hit chart that I added recently. So there's lots of different things that are going on with the game. A little bit here, a little bit there. Just trying to add in some details at this point. But once lefty righty splits are done, that'll be the majority of what I want to finish next. The ratings will be finished, and then the game will be mostly playable at that point. So everybody's kind of getting a look at this game as it goes on. Maybe you'll get tired of it. Maybe you'll get tired of hearing about it. But hopefully, this is interesting for you to see behind the scenes. If it's not interesting, then feel free to move on. I know that most companies don't let you see all this stuff because you could just steal it, I guess, if you wanted to. You'd be a real jerk face McGee to take all this work that I've done and make it your own. But I guess if you want to do that, you can. Um, but don't do that. Instead, just support me doing all this work for you and just enjoy playing the game. If you're learning something about how to create a game, then I think that that's great. You should. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, just click on subscribe. Um, and if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, share it out to your community, and say, hey, nobody's ever doing this kind of stuff, showing us behind the scenes what their spreadsheets look like and how they get to, you know, people don't show you how they get to those values and numbers. I'm just using stats, man, and it's coming straight off of these stats, and then it's just doing calculations that seem to make sense to get you to a place that makes sense for the game engine in the direction that you're going. So that's all I'm doing every time. Hopefully, using stats-based game engines helps the creation process, so that in some ways it helps, some ways it hurts. Just depends on how you're thinking about some different things. Sometimes it will be easier for me to just create some values. Sometimes it'll be harder. But excuse me. Yeah, I don't know. That's how it works. And I got to get going and get ready for work. But I appreciate you, everybody who is supporting what I'm doing. That you like this kind of behind the scenes stuff, and these are always my best videos with the most views. So I'll keep doing them and keep showing you what I'm doing, and maybe it'll help the community in some way, or maybe it'll help you to appreciate the games that I put out a little bit more as you see kind of what's in the black box behind what you see on the cards and in the roster sheets. All right, I think that's it from here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.